What if a single accident could change the entire course of neuroscience? That's exactly what happened in 1848 when a 13-pound iron rod exploded through the skull of Phineas Gage. The result? Not just his survival, but a shocking transformation that would redefine our understanding of the brain forever. In Cavendish, Vermont, in 1848, Phineas Gage, then 25 years old, was blowing up rocks to make room for a new train route. He would use a 13-pound metal rod called a tamping iron to pack in sand after drilling a hole and placing an explosive charge. In this case, however, the charge was ignited by a spark produced by the metal bar. According to Jack Van Horn, an associate professor of neurology at the University of Southern California's Keck School of Medicine, the explosion consequently drove this tamping iron up and out of the hole, through his left cheek, behind his eye socket, and out of the top of his head. Gage survived. However, his once balanced attitude drastically altered after the tamping iron killed a large portion of his left frontal lobe. Gage's personality changed after the injury, according to Dr. John Harlow, who treated him. He is fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity, which was not previously his custom, Harlow wrote after the incident. Malcolm Macmillan, an honorary professor at the Melbourne School of Psychological Sciences and the author of An Odd Kind of Fame Stories of Phineas Gage, explains that Gage's appearance in several medical textbooks is due to this abrupt change in personality. He was the first case where you could say fairly definitely that injury to the brain produced some kind of change in personality, said Macmillan. And it was significant in the middle of the 19th century, when the function and inner workings of the brain were still mostly unknown. Phrenologists were still using bumps on the skull to gauge a person's personality at the time. According to Alan Roper, a neurologist at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, Gage's well-known example would contribute to the development of brain research as a discipline. Dr. John Harlow also reported on Gage's personality shift as mentioned earlier. This was reported by him in an 1851 issue of the American Phrenological Journal and Repository of Science. Roper explains, "If you talk about hardcore neurology and the relationship between structural damage to the brain and particular changes in behavior, this is ground zero. The instance was perfect as it's one region of the brain, it's really obvious. And the changes in personality were stunning. That every generation of brain scientists feels driven to review Gage's example may thus not be unexpected." For instance, in the 1940s, a famous neurologist named Stanley Cobb diagrammed the skull in an effort to determine the exact path of the tamping iron. In the 1980s, scientists repeated the exercise using CT scans. In the 1990s, researchers applied 3D computer modeling to the problem. And in 2012, Van Horn led a team that combined CT scans of Gage's skull with MRI scans of typical brains to show how the wiring of Gage's brain could have been affected. Neuroscientists like to always go back and say, we're relating our work in the present day to these older famous cases which really define the field. And it's not just researchers who keep coming back to Gage. Medical and psychology students still learn his story, and neurosurgeons and neurologists still sometimes reference Gage when assessing certain patients. Every 6 months or so you'll see something like that, where somebody has been shot in the head with an arrow, or falls off a ladder and lands on a piece of rebar, so you do have these modern kind of Phineas Gage-like cases, Van Horn explains. According to Macmillan, most individuals are unaware of something about Gage. That personality change, which undoubtedly occurred, did not last much longer than about 2 to 3 years. According to Macmillan, Gage then worked as a long-distance stagecoach driver in Chile, a position that called him a great deal of concentration and preparation. According to Gage, this period of his life has a significant lesson for patients today. Even in cases of massive brain damage and massive incapacity, rehabilitation is always possible. After his accident, Gage lived for 12 years, but in the end his death was most likely caused by the brain damage he had received. On May 21, 1860, he passed away after an epileptic episode that was most likely caused by his brain damage. Phineas Gage's story reminds us of the incredible resilience of the human brain and how one accident helped ignite a whole new field of scientific discovery. If you found this journey into the origins of neurology as fascinating as we did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more stories that change science, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next deep dive. Thanks for watching.